Mike and I
All
are the
right.
only two brave enough to have our cameras on.
I guess so. It's okay. Not everyone's ready for cameras on Monday afternoon, right? Oh, there's one. Hi. So welcome to the first day of our fall student activities. We are hosting this resume and career chat here for our student members. Some of our SAE professional members were kind enough to take some time out of their Monday afternoon slash morning, depending upon what coast you're on. Dean, it's probably morning for you, right? um, but we just kind of want to talk about and start thinking about, what are the do's and don'ts for your resumes and cover letters and the whole process of looking for a job, starting from your application and cover letter to the interview process to the post interview process. Dean, I know you always have some really good tips about post interviews from your industrial lecture that you like to give. So, with that being said, I'll just do a quick introduction of myself. My name is Corey Dillon. I am the member relations specialist for the membership department. We are located in Pittsburgh. I'm still currently working from home, and that's okay. I don't have a 30-minute commute every day. Um, and with that, let's just, I like to do these things alphabetically. So why don't we start out with Kyle, if you wanted to introduce yourself real quick, give a little background on yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yes. Okay. So, hi Corey. Hi Dean. Nice to finally see you in person and that. So yeah, my name is Kyle Brown. I'm an SAE member of the Historic Vehicle Technical Standards Committee as well as the Infrastructure Applications Technical Standards Committee. I'm a recent graduate in August 2019 or 2020 of my master's in data science and business analytics, with my concentration being advanced computing or data engineering. My first degree was in finance, but I was a double major in electrical engineering as well. Yeah, and I guess I'd say my tip would be don't overthink it, because that's kind of what I really do quite often in that. Just understand the company that you're really targeting in that, and just get as much information as you can. So when you ask questions in that, they can provide feedback. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I think Dean, you're probably up next.
I guess maybe I'm the old guy here. I've been doing this with SAE for 40 years now, since I was a student at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Uh, and on resumes, I would just stress for me, and all those, I think this will be a great discussion because not everyone will agree on certain things, but the rules I have are I want to see one page only. You can't convince me to talk to you in one page. Two or more is not going to help you. The purpose of a resume is not to get you hired. The purpose of the resume is to get someone to call you and say, I want to meet this person. So it's just got to be enough information on there to say, yes, this is a person of interest. So I would kind of agree. Don't overthink it. Don't try to put too much in there. Just put some key stuff that's going to entice someone. And one thing I really like to see, particularly if there's students on this call or who are viewing this video later, if you don't graduate till 2023 or 2024, tell me an objective what you're looking for. You're looking for a part-time job, internship, co-op, because otherwise, if I see you graduate in 3 years, I don't know what to do with that resume. It's of no value to me, and I can't do anything to help you with it unless I know what you're looking for. That's my quick overview.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean. Todd, welcome. You want to do a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, Todd Swermancic, Oshkosh Defense, been part of SAE since I was at Michigan Tech, 03 to 08, and currently working on some sponsorship support of SAE Baja and Consumobile. Hiring manager in our test and development group, and always looking at new candidates and experienced candidates that have automotive-like interests. So our hiring team focuses a lot on the SAE type activities, and in our review of resumes, we're looking for candidates with hands-on experience and to some extent have goals and passion for this type of stuff that we do in industry. That about covers it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. I think Molly, you're up. Oh wait, shoot, no. Derek. Derek, then Molly.
Hi, my name is Derek Donovan. I'm a design engineer for General Motors. I graduated in 2016 and from Central Michigan University. I was on their Baja team, so I've been with SAE for quite some time now. And my best tip is, don't be afraid to put yourself out there as far as resumes. Make sure that you get the information you need on the paper, but make sure you leave it like everyone else has said. Make sure you have a you want them to come and talk to you is the biggest thing that you're trying to do with your resume. It doesn't need to be your life story, but it needs to be your highlight reel of everything that you've done thus far.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Molly, why don't you go ahead?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Molly Gerardin. I've got a very similar story, I guess, with everything that Todd said. So Todd and I actually work together. I also work at Oshkosh Defense, senior test engineer here. And I've been with the company almost 6 years now. But I was in Baja back when I was in college. And yeah, as far as a resume goes, because I'm part of the recruiting team with Todd going back to Michigan Tech every year, not being too wordy. And I agree with Dean, keep it to one page. It's very hard when you're trying to tell me all your achievements and your accomplishments and there's paragraphs there. Like I like to see your highlighted stuff, make a little note next to it of all the things that you talked about and that I really like about this stuff to get me to come and talk back. I have no idea where to put these notes and what to refer it to if you're just using a lot of words and paragraphs. So keep it short and concise, and then those are your topics that we can use to break out and talk about these things. Tell me more details about this. But as long as I have that high level information, it's a lot easier to pick that stuff out to have a conversation.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Molly. And then we'll have Fred and then Mike.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is Fred Kelly. I'm the America's R&D Director for Prismium Group. So I provide leadership for North America, Central America, and South America for R&D for the organization. Been with the organization 33 years and started interacting with SAE when I was in college. Of course, I reached out for help back then and to help solve some problems that I was encountering in my job as an electrician for a monster truck team. But over the years, it's been a lot of fun. I've gotten involved with SAE. My mentor guided me to become more involved at SAE, and I'm thrilled to say that today I'm more involved than I've ever been in my life, chairing committees and providing guidance and to mentoring to others, and really trying to work with the group to really kind of pave the way to the future. The teams that I have the pleasure of leading are very diverse. Group of technicians, engineers, chemists, and material scientists, really responsible for a variety of developments for the organization. And I'm a hiring manager. I am very involved. I enjoy being in the laboratory and being involved in the development process. And so I still have my lab coat, and I really look for people that are excited, that want to take part, they want to learn, they want to get outside of their comfort zone and really not see things just as they are right now, but really provide that vision of where we can go and where we're going to head next. As far as your resume, I want you to impress me. Unlike some of my peers here, I'm okay with 2 pages. It's okay. You can impress me. I will take the time to look at it, and I'm looking for those skills and that potential. I agree. If you can keep it on 1 page, that's a good plan, because a lot of hiring managers are not going to look at your resume more than a minute. And so they need to see it. They need to get the message, and they need to know that you're the one that they've been looking for. I can tell you, just because you're here today, it tells me that you are driven to do better and to be the best. And that's a very good sign. And so I encourage you to keep doing that as you step forward. And certainly looking forward to helping you along the way. Thank you.
All right, Mike, you're up.
Okay, well, I guess I've been in the motorsports industry for 26 years, focusing mostly on brake systems and clutches, all levels of motorsports up to the very top. But I've had my mechanical engineering degree, bachelor's and master's from the University of Akron, where I first got involved with SAE and the Formula SAE programs there. I've been working as a judge in Formula SAE for close to 20 years now, keeping involved with that, and I think it's a great program, that and many of the other programs that SAE does for the students. There's a lot to take advantage of there. You know, the resume to me is one of the most important pieces of work that you will ever put together in your life, and the resume should reflect that. It should be well organized, it should be clear, and it should be concise. A little more than a page is okay, but you know, most students coming out of college are one page is more than enough. You know, I can see a little more than that if you've got 20 years of experience, a little more, a few more bullet points to add there at that point. But you know, one of the things I'm looking for is well-rounded experience, especially on the practical end. Engineering school is much more than memorizing equations. It's knowing how to put those equations together. And engineering school is really learning how to solve problems of all types, not just the mathematical. It gives you good problem-solving ability if you really got out of it what you should. And I'm looking for the ability to take on projects and not do the minimum amount to get through it, but to take on projects and conquer them and solve them and see them good through to a positive result. So I'm also looking for some enthusiasm there. And then something nobody else has really mentioned that I think is a critical part is the cover letter, because the cover letter fills in a lot of holes that the resume can't cover, and it's where you can show your true passion and what drives you, and why you're heading in this general direction.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you everyone for introducing yourself and giving some of your favorite resume tips. You know, I think we only have 2 students on here, so you know, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you want to introduce yourself, please feel free. William, why don't you go first? You are in the middle of my screen, unfortunately, so we're going to pick on you first. We can't hear you, so I don't know. You're unmuted, but I'm not sure what's happening with your audio. Wait, I think
Does that work better?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm William Modeste. I work with CSUOB on the Baja SAE team. At least right now, I'm a mechanical engineering student, second year. And I'm right now the front suspension design lead. I've been doing that for about a semester now. So I'm relatively new to it, but I'm really open to learn. Nice to meet you all.
Hello everyone. My name is Jeffrey. I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering at NYU Tandon. I'm currently a new member of SAE. I just joined Baja this semester, so it's good to see everyone having this much experience. I relatively don't have that much experience, but I'll say I'm very passionate in building and designing. From early on, ever since high school, I was part of my school's robotics team. I was team captain. So if anything goes to show, I really like to take initiative, and I'm looking forward to pursuing more in the automotive industry.
All right, perfect. Well, welcome to you both. Do you guys have any questions for our panel here?
I suppose I have.
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I have one question. How relevant is work that's not related to SAE, in terms of maybe I had a job in high school or I have a job now? How relevant would that work experience be to our resume?
Mike here, I think that's critical to have it on there. One, we want to show that you know how to work, that you know how to show up on time and fulfill your responsibilities and do it. And there's a lot of things that play into this. You know, there's a lot of things that, even though you're an engineer, often things involve customer service. And waiters and waitresses get a lot of experience at customer service, even things that you do there. I was helping the son of a friend with his resume, and he had a car being parking cars when you went to park at the restaurant there, the nice restaurant. And I said, "What did you do?" And he said he parked cars. And I said, "No, think about it. What did you really do? What was your real true responsibility?" And really, what it came down to was he was there to make sure that the first and last experience that customer had with that business was a good one during their visit.
Let me add to that. I think it's key at your stage of your career, just starting out, to show that you have paid employment. And keep in mind when you're looking at your resume, don't look at your resume just as a standalone document. Imagine the person reading it who's sifting through 100+ resumes. And we joke on the industry side, no one wants to be your first boss. And so even if you had a really horrible minimum wage job, as Mike said, you learned a lot about customer service and other things that are relevant. When I see a resume that shows 0 work experience, I'm assuming that did he have rich parents, never had to work, or was so brilliant, has full scholarship, I'm not really sure what to make of it. So I like to see on a resume that you have some work experience, even has nothing to do with engineering, and also some volunteer experience, but differentiate between those two. A lot of student resumes I see where they list their work in the Baja project as work. It's like, no, not really. That was volunteer or part of a class project. That's different from paid work, where you had to deal with a bad boss potentially. I think you need to have both. And just keep in mind that, this resume that you're doing now in school, once you have a year or so experience, you're going to completely rewrite the resume, because right now the number one thing you're selling is your education, and that you have the ability to come in and do whatever is needed in an organization. Going after that, then you're going to be talking about your work experience. So when you have the resume right now, it's education at the top, then your work experience, because it's not hugely significant compared to education. A couple of years from now, you'll flip-flop that, and your work experience becomes the most important thing, and then your education secondary. At least that's how I view it. And I loved it. I think this will be good, because I think we might have some difference of opinion between some of the industry professionals. And that's something you should keep in mind, that there isn't one exact template that'll work for everybody. This is kind of like deciding where we're going to go have dinner. A great Chinese place, someone else knows a good Mexican place, someone else wants pizza. They're all good choices. It's just, there's some preferences there that are not an objective. Your resume is bad. The one thing I will add, though, before shutting up about one page, I've worked for 2 Japanese companies. And so I've had bosses who were exceptionally smart, that English was not their native language. I really honed my writing skills to be very direct, to the point, and get it across in a 1-page summary. And so if you work in a company like that, you live and die by a 1-page. You can have a portfolio as long as you want. Your LinkedIn profile can go as long as you want, put other stuff, but you can't summarize things on a 1-page document. In my opinion, it means you don't know how to edit properly, that you really need to figure out what is most important to get your point across, the key information. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, this is Fred Kelly. Absolutely include those work experiences that you've had. Absolutely. And the issue is we want to know that you've worked, had a variety of experiences, but also had that opportunity to communicate with people, work with teams, get along, learn things that you didn't know before, and see how you reacted with problems and with challenges. Make sure that on the other side of it, you have a great attitude about that job. I think your attitude and how you present yourself is really important, whether it's a terrible job or a great job. When you talk to me, it should have been a great experience, and give me the positives of that. I mean, that's what I want to hear. I want you to come away with that positive attitude. Not every day is going to be easy. I can tell you, whether you are working in a restaurant or working as an engineer, not every day is easy, but that perspective and that ability to adjust is extremely important. And we may talk to your bosses that you had in those jobs, and it's wonderful when they just want to just gloat over all of the things that you did in that job. So do your best. Always think about what that job leads to in the future, and by all means include it. I think it's in your best interest, and you will do better because of it.
Hey, I think I want to kind of agree with both Fred and Dean in that, in terms of, writing when you're stating your objection, not your objection, but your work history in that, or just even any sort of achievements or your certificates in that. Have it in, like, using structured writing with emphasis on the grammar and complete sentences. So what I'd like to do is, have like a top-down approach where I lead with, demonstrating, what I did for that particular project, and then following it with point A, point B. This is, if it's modeling, Simulink, multi-body, to that effect in that. And I think that kind of goes, right into what Mike was saying as well, with having well organized, clear, and concise in that. Kind of, you always want to, for each experience or for anything that you just to try to minimize, but also to emphasize your writing skills as much as possible.
A couple other things. Just I've got a one pager on this when I give my careers talk. Little things like doing it as a PDF and making sure the file name is not resume.pdf, because you send that in and someone else has that same file name, yours is going to get replaced with that. Making sure that you just do some basic things. It's been noted by several people, proofread is a recommendation. Absolutely. I mean, I think we've all, if you've been doing this long enough, you've seen some ones that were just embarrassing. I saw a 2-page resume where the person misspelled his own name on page 2. Like, wow. And it's kind of like, if that's the attention to detail they did on their resume, are they going to do a good job? And that's the type of doubt you don't ever want to put in someone's mind. So, there are some little fundamental things like that. And that wouldn't matter if you're applying for an engineering job or anything. You got to proofread. You got to make sure your file name is simple. I recommend PDF, because if you send it as a Word document and I don't have the latest font you have, or I'm on an obsolete version, the formatting may get blown up and it won't look like you wanted it to. I did see someone commented on the SAE member connection forum. There was one student posted his resume, and another student suggested he put his a headshot in the upper right corner of the resume. And it's like, that was a student from abroad. And it's kind of like, I don't think you want to do that. I think in the US, that's really frowned upon. And I saw a resume years ago where someone had listed, they were from Europe, and they listed all kinds of personal information, driver's license number, social security number, and other personal details that should never be put on a resume.
All right, good stuff. Jeffrey, do you have any specific questions?
I think, as like Fred mentioned early on, you guys are trying to see like strong signs of initiative. I'm just wondering, what could those strong signs of initiatives be in the resume, or like how do they look like?
I'm sorry, what kind of initiatives were those you were looking for?
Oh, like just basic initiatives, um, like as mentioned like earlier. I think Fred was discussing more about this. He just wants to see strong signs of initiative like in the job. But I was just curious to know how to like show some strong signs of initiatives like in a resume.
I think you can list, I mean, since I've met William once, he can say he's part of the Cal State Long Beach, he's, active member in reestablishing the Cal State Long Beach SAE team. Like, boom, that shows initiative that he was part of the leadership group doing that. A lot of it is just the wording of what you are doing. That did you I visited NYU Tandon. Is there something you can say that, you took the lead on a particular aspect of the project, or, you took the initiative, you recruited 10 new members, or you established relations, stronger ties with your counterparts at SWE, SHIP, and NSBE, or things like that? There are things you can do that are beneficial to both your team as well as you as an individual, but then you can take credit for it.
All right, well, let me
Well,
ask kind of just
I'm sorry, I was going
no,
to kind of follow up with that to Jeffrey's comment and to Dean's as well. And I think I can relate to you a little bit more, Jeffrey, because I didn't really get to really kind of disclose a little bit more of my the Formula Hybrid background that I do have. So I was president of Formula Hybrid at Wayne State University from 2017 to pretty much 2020. So I understand where you're kind of coming in, wanting to, not having that, you want to assume them leadership roles, you want to take on that responsibility, have those initiatives. And I would say for me personally, it would be like to volunteer as much as possible within like in your Baja team or whatever, formula team or whatever, because I know some universities have like SAE chapters within that's outside of the competitive teams. And then within those SAE, like with those chapters, they do specific initiatives, even, activities, community related where they have some sort of educational component. So there's all sorts of aspects that SAE does that's adjacent to it. But I would just say continually just keep pushing yourself and just have that mindset, because I was exactly where you were, and this is a great opportunity, because I wish I would have this opportunity when I was, first year, second year student like yourself, and then get an opportunity to hear this sort of advice, because this is like gold. So yeah, for me personally, I think that keep on the directions you're going, and just if you can find the opportunity, just always ask, even within your team, if there's anything else you can assist with. I think that would lead to a real good initiative. Thank you.
Yeah, to further add to that, I would just say, one of the biggest thing is you got to look at the big picture. Most hiring managers are looking, we're looking at students. We're seeing everyone is a student. But what sets you apart as a student than just someone that got their degree and graduated? Then that's the initiative that we're looking for, that you were willing to step outside your comfort zone and get more involved in SAE, or really anything that you were very involved in. It just shows that you are kind of different than everyone that we're looking for, and that definitely raises some eyebrows that people start looking into your resume deeper and seeing, okay, what did they do to set themselves apart?
One other aspect, once you have the resume, we have no one here who's from an HR perspective, and I always joke that HR actually, you think it stands for human resources, but it stands for huge roadblock. Those are the people that prevent you from being hired, and you're trying to get your resume in front of someone who has the ability to say yes. And several of the panelists here are in that position, and which is why you want to engage with your local SAE section and things like that, or whether you become active on SAE member connection and other things, where you can make the connection to where you can get the resume in front of the right person who will then give you several minutes to read it, because I think the comment about a manager has maybe a minute to look at, that's probably uh, optimistic in some cases, because there'll be 200 or 300 resumes that go through. And it used to be a low-level HR person would sift through, and there were some criteria, it must be this major, these are the schools we like to recruit from, blah, blah, blah. And then they sift it down to from 300 to a stack of 20 they hand to the hiring manager. And you want to make sure you bypass that filter, because maybe your GPA wasn't high enough or whatever other filter there was. So a lot of this is targeting the right people, and that's why active involvement in SAE needs those people. So if you're in an area where there's an active section, go to the events and always have a resume with you, such that you can get some feedback. And even if you're not looking for a job right now, let's say you're a couple of years away from graduating, ask if you can get an informational interview with someone that you've sought out, that you aspire to their career path, and get them to go over your resume in detail with you, because then they can help focus it on that particular organization. what GM looks for in a resume may be a little bit different than what Ford or Toyota or BMW look for. And figuring out those internal sources and figure out the buzzwords that work within that group. Because that's the other thing, that it went from the low-level HR person reviewing physical copies of a resume to now an algorithm reviewing it. If you don't have the right buzzword in it, you just don't make the cut. And it's very frustrating, not just at the student level, but for experienced professionals. Like, you apply for a job you're qualified for, and you never hear back, and some algorithm took you out of the mix. So a lot of this is figuring out what words need to be in there. And if you're applying to a particular company and you see certain words that pop up in their job descriptions, you want to figure out how, if you can put some of those words into your resume. You rewrite and pick your vocabulary strategically based on either the person or the machine that's going to read it, and figure out how do you bypass that first filter.
I have another question. So I think there's primarily the large companies like GM or Ford or something like that. But I personally been interested in working with, there's some smaller companies that I'd like to work for. For example, I believe it's in Ontario. There's Bizimoto. There's a guy named BZ there that works.
Yeah.
I don't know, you might be familiar. I
Yeah.
really like to work there. He does really cool stuff. And I'm just wondering, I think there's also like Action Clutch. I believe that's close to here as well. And there's MP as well. But how would we format our resume to better suit those smaller companies? Or is it just the same?
On some of those, one of the first times years ago, I was doing recruiting when I worked at Mazda R&D, and I got a resume that came in, solid resume, but he had a couple of, in essence, it was a mini portfolio. And if you worked on a project, you designed the front suspension on a Baja thing, do a one-page on that with graphics showing what you did. And, for those of us, Mike O'Neill can probably remember back when we were graduating, you'd have to spend half the interview explaining what Baja or Formula was, because the person on the other side of the desk didn't know what it is. Now it's universal that everyone in the industry knows what Formula SA and Baja SA is. Now it's just a matter of, what did you do on the project? And so, it's easier but harder. It's easier that you don't have to explain the basics, but you better know what you did and be able to explain that to someone. And you can do it, I think, visually. For someone like Bizimoto or something, if you put together some photos, a one pager, and can get that to them. But here again, you got to figure out how to get directly to him. And if you can drive out, show initiative, drive out to the shop, hand them, take a small portfolio. If there's something that's within a reasonable drive, show that initiative. I love a story that a friend of mine told me years ago, that he went to the company and found where the mailroom was, and he had a list of names. So he figured out how to get some inner office envelopes and put his resume in inner office envelopes to go to the right people. Because then when they got it, it's like, I can't ignore this. This must have come from someone else in the company. So he basically circumvented the system, which I thought was brilliant. So, if you're doing it cross country, it's harder to do, but now there's research tools like LinkedIn to find someone, and you can say, hey, look, I see that so-and-so at General Motors. This is in the exact department I like to work for. Or, it's in motorsports. Mike O'Neill probably knows everybody in the IMSA paddock, on the technical side. Those are the type of connections you can make. But smaller companies, I think it's even more important, just get to the right person. We were lucky. We did a SAE SoCal workshop a while back, and Gail Banks himself came out and was reviewing resumes. So, when you've got the guy whose name is on the building looking at it, you're either going to pass or fail, and there's no appealing to that. He either said, yeah, I want you to come and talk to my team, or you don't have the right stuff, but at least you'll know.
Yeah, and the small companies are really looking for a lot of breadth. Looking for, you have to wear a lot of hats in a small company. As an example, I can give you, I had 3 days to come up with ways to make vast improvements to the cooling system on the front brakes of a C7 Corvette. And with the resources that I have available to me, period. I got a chance to meet the engineer at GM who designed the front cooling system on the C7 Corvette. He spent 2 years on the project. 2 years. That was his assignment. Very narrow range and vast amount of tools and resources and test labs within the GM working for him to do that. So, often larger companies are often looking more to fill you into a slot, or the smaller companies want you to take on, I'm not sure saying a lot more responsibility is the right way of putting it, but you're definitely going to have a wider range of talents.
This is Fred Kelly. Today I work for the largest wire and cable company on the planet, but when I first started in my career, I was working for a much smaller organization. And I agree, you need to come across to someone that's very versatile, very capable, being able to fill the gap. I don't know how many times I heard that early in my career, filling the gap. There was always gaps. And basically we had to adapt, had to figure out a solution. You're constantly going to be faced with problems that you're going to have to solve. And in a small organization, it's a very diverse group of problems. And it's actually kind of fun to be in that type of organization because it's so different every day, or at least it can be. And so I encourage you, if that interests you, I can tell you from experience that it's very rewarding. But present yourself in the resume as being that type of person. Do the research on the company up front, know what you're after, and really head to the heart of that. Present yourself as capable and as versatile and being able to do what they need. And that will get their attention.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I can ask one. All right. So, we've talked a lot about resumes, I always heard the rule same as Dean, keep it to a one page, clear, concise. I was an English major though, so that's a little bit different than what you guys do. But so when it comes to cover letters, what are the do's and don'ts for those?
You can start with a template, but it needs to be customized. A funny story, I did on-campus recruiting one time, and there were several other car companies there, I think that same day, and when a student mailed me a resume, the cover letter, he referenced one of the other companies who was at the show. I'm so interested in careers at, it's like, that's not who I work for. So be very careful if you're using a template that you don't accidentally leave something that's not relevant or is specifically related to another company. I think if you can show some, hey, I love the new such and such car, or I've been a fan of such and such for years, showing the genuine enthusiasm and knowledge of what you're pursuing, that can really come out in the cover letter. And that's where you want to ask your English major roommate to help you refine that. Because that isn't the bullet point, one-page document. That is showing your personal side. So definitely have someone who's not an engineer help edit that.
Yeah, I put a big effort in the cover letter. I read the cover letter first. A lot of people skip that and go straight to the resumes. I do the cover letter because that's going to help me understand the resume, and it needs to be tailored to that job. And along the lines of what Dean was saying, put something in there that shows that you understand what that company's doing, that you have an interest in what they're doing. Those who do not put a serious effort in the cover letter probably are not going to put a serious effort into the job when they work for you either, is the way I look at it. So it's make sure that it's dedicated to that specific job opening. Use it to explain, a little more about what you've done. Yes, you've done Baja, but what is it that you got out of Baja? It's much more than just driving a car around. You've taken on a major project and handled it. And what sometimes you find other aspects that are particularly challenging, like the organizational part. But writing is so important. What happens a lot of times in these companies is there can be a meeting and people can argue and argue verbally about the best way to do something, and it just seems to bounce off people a lot of times. But if somebody slides forward a document, say, I think this is written, this is what I think we should do and why, and there's a plan to follow there, that carries a lot more credence with it. And it's the same, and so I like to see that demonstration of you need to be able to sell yourself as an engineer and your writing abilities. And again, it comes back to that words of organization, concise.
Yeah, I agree. A professionally written cover letter is so important. It is your opportunity to reach out to me and to leave me with the message, right? So tell me what you're going to tell me, and then tell me what you told me. Make sure that I leave with the message. And really doing a careful job, as has already been said. I mean, we live in a world today that isn't necessarily always so carefully written. But this really should be. We're looking for professional people that can do the job, but also present themselves extremely well. As was said, you are selling yourself, and you want to be sold, make it happen, make it very clear and carefully written. And I think at the end, then we'll look at that resume a little differently and really focus in on the message that you're after.
Two funny ones. I remember years ago, I got a cover letter that was, I think no exaggeration, must have been 5 pages long. And it was a laundry list of everything he thought was wrong with our products. It's kind of like, some of that he was right, but it's like the whole tone of it was so off-putting. It's like, yeah, we don't want to know it all like you, that you need to be positive on that. So be careful. You want to show product knowledge, but I've seen that more than once. But this was the most extreme, where it went on for multiple pages of everything we had was junk. It's like, yeah, I don't think you're going to fit in here. The other funny one was, I remember on a resume, a person who I met when he was a student and have been friends with him for 30 plus years now. On his list of interests, he listed Central American politics. And I asked him, I go, I don't know if you're extreme right of center, left of center, but I just see this. And I said, it has nothing to do with engineering. And I just see that you could be a troublemaker. That I really encourage you to be careful when you list interests that are not related to the job. If you list, you've done automotive restoration, or you do woodworking or whatever, some sports, that's fine. But when you start listing things that are maybe a little more extreme, you got to be careful. That could be off-putting. This particular person is now a vice president of a major car company. So he did listen to my advice and drop that off his resume, but brilliant person. And on the one hand, it was kind of funny, but just to show that you've got interest beyond just engineering. And some of that can be really good because it's a great way to potentially bond with someone there. If you find out that you have a common interest, whether it's in music or arts or a sport or something, that is sometimes the best way to establish a relationship with someone who can help become a little bit of your advocate within that company. That, someone will say, yeah, you really got to look at the resume of this person. Maybe half of what they know about you is not related to engineering, but they feel strongly about you as a person and they want to see you succeed. So the interest can be helpful, but you just got to watch what you list.
Very good points that were made there. When I look at the cover letter, I'm looking for someone that's hungry to learn more. Believe it or not, you're not going to learn everything there is to know in college. And when you come to us, you've got a beginning, and we're going to teach you for the rest of your career. And I can tell you, I've been doing what I do for 33 years and I'm still learning every day. And so I want to hear that desire, that hunger. Impress me for sure. Tell me the things that you've done and the things that you've excelled in, but clearly, clearly looking for that hunger.
All right, let me ask this. So, graduating college, ready to find your first job. How much weight would you say goes to the following things, like your GPA, your club, activities, your the classes you've taken, the internships you've done, your work history, how would you rank those, or would you even rank them? Are they all sort of just as important, or is there more weight that's put onto one thing or another?
I'll make comments about the GPA first, and then I'll let others jump in on that or other subjects. It used to be average was a 2.0 years ago. I think there's been a drift upward in grade point average on average. It seems like 3.0 is easy. In fact, I don't even put that much faith in that. As long as they've got at least a 3.0, I'm fine. And I have to weigh into that also. Were they working at the same time, or were they just going to school? Because if they're working at the same time, that makes it harder. I think what's more suspicious is if there is no GPA listed. Then I have to question why it's not there.
I think a lot of companies just use it as a filter. When I graduated, remember Hewlett Packard was one of the companies a lot of people wanted to work for at the time. And they had some outrageous, like if you didn't have at least a 3.7, they wouldn't talk to you. At least that was the word on the street. I think smaller companies are less concerned about GPAs. They want to know what you can do. But I think Mike's right on. If you don't list it, there's like a suspicion of what is it. And if you list it, it better be accurate because larger companies may check. You know, I know someone at one company I worked for. We were both hired on the same day, and like a month later, he disappeared. It turned out that there was something that was a irregularity on his transcripts. I don't think he had really falsified anything. It was just, you know, poorly presented, but he was terminated because of it. So, you know, if you claim you had a 4.0 and then they check and it turns out it's a 2.7, that's not going to be good. You could, of course, calculate different ways. What was your GPA within major or your senior level or whatever? You could probably shop around till you get the best GPA, but you better be able to document it and prove it if you put it on there.
Yeah, I think to add on, I think everything's very situational, as far as importance on what in the resume. I mean, if you don't have a good GPA per se, maybe I wouldn't, I wouldn't, like everyone else said, I would not just not have it on our resume. I would make sure that I had a lot of supporting information to justify why my GPA was that bad. Because sometimes I've seen it doing recruitment at GM. We've first kind of looked at some of the students that had the lower GPA just because their supporting information and all of their experiences and stuff like that was so powerful that we were able to kind of look past the GPA and so, in some instances um, to kind of push that person further throughout the process instead of just terminating them right there at the beginning of review just because of a low GPA. So it's very situational, and make sure that if you're going to put something on there that is not going to be par, I guess I should say, make sure you have supporting information to back up why, or if you have something that you can maybe overshadow the bad with something else that's good.
Something I used to see on resumes a lot more, I haven't seen recently, was and it kind of helped justify if the GPA wasn't stellar, particularly if you're at a commuter school. A lot of the Cal States out here, students are not on a 4-year program; they're on a 5, 6, 7, or 8-year program, working full time. And if you say, earned, 100% of your expenses, or working part time to support, that kind of gets the point across that you had other things that maybe prevented you from getting as high a grade point average because you were working, trying to, maintain living while going to school. So there's things that you can put on there that help justify, or put it in, I won't say justify, but just put it in perspective. It's easier for someone to have a higher GPA if they're on a full ride scholarship, or their parents, have enough money to where they don't have to work while they're going to school.
Yeah, for me, the high GPA is, certainly it's attractive, but it isn't the whole story. I'm looking for someone that can, and not all those situations are simple. It'd be nice if every situation was simple, but it's not. And so I'm looking for someone that can overcome and can complete and get the job done. I hired a technician that spent 10 years getting his degree. He had a full family and work schedule. He had a lot to juggle, and he's one of the best technicians I've ever hired in my life. And I can tell you that his resume impressed me because he didn't stop. He didn't give up. He kept going. He overcame a lot of challenge to get there. And so you need to present yourself as strong and someone that's capable, somebody that's going to get there. He's going to figure it out, going to solve the problems, and deliver what I'm looking for. And that's great work.
All right, well, we have about 4 minutes left. If you guys have any last minute questions, you can feel free to ask. If not, then I will ask my question. Well, they're thinking, what was everyone's first job? Do you have a question, William? You can go ahead.
Sorry. So in terms of the SAE work that we did, what would be the best way to format it in terms of like, and on a resume? Would that be, would you put like research and then maybe design work, and then would it be like, well, how would we format that work?
I think you can put a simple we do work on a formula or a Baja project. I think if you just do a subset under education that you worked on the project, and then reference that you've got a one pager that, I fully recommend doing a one pager on what you did on the formula or Baja project, because that's something that, and make that one very visual, to show that it is a real car, not just something you designed on CAD but never built, which some schools do. There are some schools, particularly with COVID, this last year, a lot of schools did not complete their projects. Circumstances beyond their control, but I think you just kind of need to put it on there, and maybe some intriguing work if you did, a particular type of suspension design. What type was it? Did you do a conventional AA arm? Was it some type of a torsion bar setup? Was it some type of, very clever design? Just reference that and then have a one pager on that. Because I think the people who know what Baja is are going to say, "Ooh, I want to talk to this guy," or there'll be a formula snob and say, "I want to find a formula guy. I don't talk to Baja guys," or something. I joke, but there are, some differences between the two. And I'm a big Baja fan because I think it is more cost effective for schools to participate. But there are some differences between how they're perceived.
All right, well, any last minute imparting pieces of wisdom to share from the group?
Yeah, I have one. I think it's very important. There's the resume, but in reality, every day is an interview. You are around the people who are going to be recommending you to these potential jobs, and how you present yourself, how you treat others. That's all going to influence whether or not you get a recommendation, or how strong these recommendations are from these other people, or if they're even going to make you aware of these job openings. So just treat every day as an interview, and you'll be very successful in life.
All right, anyone else?
Good
All
luck.
right. Yes, good luck to you students who will be watching after, who's on the call. We know that school, and especially now with all the things happening, it's probably a little difficult and stressful, but you guys will do great. So thank you for joining. Thank you to the students, to our SAE members, for participating and sharing all of your experiences and advice. And remember, Member Connection is always a good place to also ask any questions or thoughts you might have had afterwards. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey and Will. And Corey. Have a good day, everybody.